Today's guest is Wally Miller. The title, How to Become a Mindful Spender, Live Your Best Life and Retire Early. Wally Miller is a financial coach who helps high achieving individuals become work optional by taking control of their finances without sacrificing their lattes and brunches. This is Money Made Simple. Check out Wally on Instagram at Financially Thriving or visit her website at financiallythriving.com. Wally, again, is a dynamic financial coach. We know you will find today's episode full of practical information that will help you reach your life goals.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa.
Well, hello. Thanks everyone for joining us here today at Earrings Off. We have with us today, to our delight, Wally Miller. Welcome to Earrings Off.
Thank you so much for having me, Lou and Teresa. I'm super excited about having this conversation. I know you have a very engaged audience, so I'm looking forward to just having this conversation and see how we can help people.
I tell you, we are looking forward to hearing your knowledge on this very important topic. We're going to be talking about money, and I tell you, when you stated that's a subject that people don't really feel comfortable talking about. So, Wally, what is the biggest misconception around money?
Oh, what a beautiful way to start. There's so many misconceptions, but I will say that I think the majority of the people who I work with one-on-one is that if I just earned a little bit more, things will be better.
So that's not true, because that's always my hope, Wally. That's not it.
I know. So this is sort of the thing, right? One of the mistakes that I've made, and one of the mistakes that I see so many people make, is that as we earn more money, we tend to spend more money, right? So this is called lifestyle creeping up on you, or lifestyle inflation, right? So what ends up happening is that as we make more money, we tend to spend more money. We upgrade our homes, we upgrade our cars, we upgrade how much we go out to eat, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong per se in doing that, as long as we're also upgrading some other things, including things like savings, including things like paying off debt, including things like increasing or inflating how much we're setting aside to build wealth. Or when we're talking about building wealth, is essentially how much we're saving for the future, right? Our future versions of ourselves.
Yeah. Wow. Great information.
Yeah. Well, coming right out of the gate with that one, I'm certainly not letting my husband hear this episode.
Yeah, I think it's one of the mistakes, that I definitely fell trapped to, to kind of like a little bit of background and a little bit of like history for me. Like, I'm the oldest child. I am the daughter of an immigrant. I was born and raised in New York City, in the poorest borough in the city. So conversations around money didn't really happen. My parents didn't sit down with me and explain to me how to balance a checkbook or how to pay bills. So a lot of the knowledge that I had around money was observed and absorbed. And I don't know about you, but if you grew up like me, again, our parents probably didn't really like sit down and chat with us about money. So it was like conversations adults had, and you don't get into grown folk conversation.
Yeah, no, you don't. No. Yeah.
So it was a lot of, I knew that sometimes our lights got cut off. I knew sometimes there was, I wouldn't say stress and anxiety, because as a kid, you don't understand that, but you could feel like something in the air, like there was like some tension in the air.
Right.
So it was things like that where I realized, oh, okay, when there is money, things seem to be okay. And then when there's not money, or if it's not payday, things seem to be some tension in the atmosphere. And so that was sort of my understanding of money. And I took that knowledge that I had, right, of like learning about what I absorbed and observed my parents do, And I brought that into sort of adulthood as I started making grown people money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right? I didn't
yeah,
really know what to do with the money that I was earning. I was like, okay, I need to pay bills. That was sort of my understanding of like, you pay bills. And I said, okay, if I check off that box, then what do I do if there's money left over?
right, right.
And
Mm,
sort of the mistake that happened was I didn't know what to do if there was money left over because there wasn't really a lot of money left over when I was growing up. And so I did what most people do, which is, oh, I guess this means I get to spend it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
my idea was I was good with money because I paid all my bills on time. That was like my definition. I was like, you pay your bills
right,
on time,
right.
you're good with money. And so I paid my bills on time and then didn't really know what else to do after that.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
So talk a little bit about money mindset and tell us how does it affect our behaviors and our habits around money?
I love this question because so many times people will think that working on your finances is all about the math. And the math part is easy. Some people will say, I'm terrible with math, right? But all you need is your phone or a
Hmm.
calculator. It's adding and subtracting. That's the easy part of finances. It's that relational side of finances that is really that takes the most amount of work and it can be the hardest. And so what does that mean, right? What does money mindset mean? It's understanding when we think about money, how does it feel in our body? Are we excited? Does it cause us stress? Does it feel like, ooh, abundant, like money is always coming to me? Or does it feel very scarce and stretched thin, right? When we're thinking about opening the mailbox or our email
Hmm.
or the app, how does it feel when we look at our balances? Are we excited to sort of understand what those balances say and what those transactions mean? Or are we avoiding it? And so when we're thinking about money mindset is really about what is it? How is it that you think about money? How is it that that thought or how does that those thoughts that you relate to money and in the ways that you think about money, how does it make you feel, right? And even understanding how we earn it, does it feel like earning money comes easy to us or does it feel like it's very hard, right? There's that saying hard earned money,
Hmm.
quote
Hmm.
unquote,
Hmm.
right? For some people that can be very like, yes, I can hustle my way to making more money. Or does it feel like I never know how to make enough? There's never enough. And all of those thoughts that we have really impact the relationship we
Yeah,
have our money. So
yeah.
there's part math, of course. Yes, we're going to do some adding, we're going to do some
Mm-hmm.
subtracting, but I would say most of it has to do in the way that we relate to money. Right.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, studies show that between the ages of 7 and 10 is when our relationship with money is formed and shaped. Between
Wow, that
7 and
early.
10,
Wow.
that early. And so you think about what was happening in my household around that time,
Yeah.
right? Were things really hard? Were things easy? Were my parents employed or unemployed? And I think, Lou, you were a social worker working with kids,
Hmm.
right? And you know
Hmm.
how between those very formative years really
It's very,
impact
yeah,
how you
very
grow up
important.
as, yeah,
Yeah,
how it shapes how you are as an adult, right? The
absolutely.
traumas we experience, the joys, right? And a lot of those things, again, it's by observation. What are we seeing? But also, what are we absorbing, right? It's sort of not that sit down conversation around money, but what am I seeing and how does it make me feel? And
Yeah.
how am I interpreting, right, with our 7-year-old brain, how the adults around me are behaving, right? And the emotions that they're emitting. So when we think about those formative years between 7 and 10 and how our relationship with money is shaped and formed, then we bring our 16-year-old self, our 18-year-old self, our 24-year-old self, and now we give them a paycheck. And if you have healthy boundaries, structures, examples of how to interact with money, then you'll
Hmm.
be really great, right? But if you've seen certain things, you'll either mimic exactly what you saw or you'll do an extreme of doing exactly the opposite of what you've done. And I've seen this with people who had parents who did really well with money, but were maybe a little bit of money hoarders,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They either
Yeah.
become money hoarders or they're like, forget it. I hate never having
Yeah.
money. And
Yeah.
always was told no. So now I'm going to spend it, right? So it's really interesting how some people will, even in the same family, will be either really, really great
Yeah.
with money or do the total opposite and
Yeah.
struggle with money a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And I tell you, this next question, Wally, why do so many people fail when budgeting? Because when
The
people,
B word.
yeah, and I love a budget. I
Okay.
mean, I can't get enough of knowing where my money is. I can't get enough of projecting where I'm going to be. So, to me, that people who are opposed to budgeting, that's just something that I'm trying to wrap my brain around. I like to know where I'm going and where I expect to end up. And that's what I see budgeting as.
Yeah, the B word, right? The
Yeah,
budget
yeah,
word. I
yeah.
think for a lot of people, budgeting can feel or sound restrictive. I actually don't use the word budgeting
Hmm.
too often because I do think it can be so triggering for people
Wow.
that what I like to say is creating a plan for how you spend or creating a
Hmm.
spending plan.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a couple of things happening. One is that people will think making a list of your bills is budgeting. This is my rent, my mortgage, my light bill, gas, my car payment, my car insurance. That's my budget, right? I just make a list of
Mhm.
all the bills that I have to pay. And that's not quite really creating a plan for your money. Another thing people will do is tracking. Now, tracking can be incredibly helpful. That's where you save all of the receipts for everything you ever spent money on, and
Mhm.
then you kind of see where your money went. The problem that I have with tracking, and I think one of the reasons why people feel overwhelmed by is that it can be quite tedious.
Yeah,
And
that's a lot.
it's
Yeah.
a lot. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, when you are tracking money, what is happening is that you are figuring out where your money went. But guess what? Here's the problem. It's already gone,
Yeah.
right? You've already spent the money. And so when people track, they feel like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do now? And like I said, knowing where your money went is important. It gives you information or data. But the example that I always like to give my clients is okay, think of yourself in a car. When are in a car, you have a small rear view mirror to see what's already happened, right? And you see the exits you passed or missed, right? You get to see the information that's already happened, but you are not driving the car by looking at what's already happened. You're driving the car by the biggest piece of glass, right? In the car, which is that front windshield. You even have side view mirrors to see what's next to you. But when we're thinking about managing our finances and managing our money, what we want to do is plan ahead. You want to look ahead and plan ahead, right? So you understand, oh, there's a speed bump. Oh, hold on, there's a cone in the middle of the road. Oh, wait a minute, I see there's an exit coming up. And so it's really important to rather so much of like going behind and seeing what's already happened to sort of look forward and see where is it that I am going, right? And so I like to use the example of someone who might be trying to eat healthier, right? Trying to make that decision at a restaurant, you've already kind of set yourself up for failure a little bit, right? You want to make that decision before you're at the restaurant. You want to look at that menu before you go to the restaurant and say, okay, am I going to have a dessert or am I going to skip it? Am I going to have an appetizer, a main entree, a dessert, and then have coffee or wine or whatever the case might be? You really want to understand, make those decisions before you're in it. And that's the same thing with money. And this is to your point, what you mentioned, Lou, which is really sort of thinking about, okay, this is the money that I am going to be bringing in. It's going to hit that direct deposit on Friday. Before it hits my account, where is it that I
Mhm.
want it to go? What are the expenses that are essential? Those things that are going to keep a roof over my head,
Mhm.
food on the table, keep the lights on. Where is it that I want that money to go? And then whatever is left over, where do I want it to go? Right. So it's like, where do I need it to go? sort of said
Mm.
that a little backwards, but where do I need it to go? And then where do I want it to go? Because this is not about not spending money on the things that bring us a joy or that add value to our lives. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, I don't need a manicure, but I
Mm.
want a manicure. And it's okay to want those things. I don't need to go out to a restaurant, but me and my husband, we enjoy going out to a restaurant, right? So it's sort of understanding, okay, where is it? What are my most essential expenses? And then with whatever is left over, how do I want to design my life? How do I want it to feel?
Mhm. Wow. Um, I just want to say, Wally, that after this episode, Teresa's going to have an assignment, and that's to go back and listen again because these, and she knows why I'm saying that. I'm just
Yes.
saying, okay?
Yes.
A
Yeah.
little hint there.
I'm
And
thinking about all of it, Lou.
yeah, I will say that a lot of times I find people to really be feel guilty about where how they've managed their money or feel a lot of shame around it, right? And with that shame and guilt can come avoidance. And when people come to work with me, I say, listen, if you want to work with me thinking you never want to have to think about money, I'm not going to be the right financial coach for you. I'm not going to be this is not going to be the money coaching program for you because it's not about never thinking about money, but it's about changing the way we feel when we think about money. It's about changing the way we feel when we see the credit card bill and the credit card transactions. It's about changing the way we feel when we see our income. It's about changing the way we feel when it's time to spend it. A little bit of my story was that I started a really decent job. I started making really good money. And like I said, I thought I was good with money because I was paying my bills, but I didn't really understand that there was like this whole other level because I didn't really, growing up, we didn't really
Hmm.
save.
Right, right,
There wasn't money to be saved.
right.
And I would say a lot of people in our communities, they know how to hustle. They know
Yeah.
how to make money when things are tight, like they know how to bring in money. Bringing in money isn't the problem. And I would say sometimes it's even saving. Sometimes saving is good for some people, right? Like in our communities, we have heard of things like tandas or sozos or lending circles, right? It's like when
Mm-hmm.
Christmas time is coming or when the family reunion is happening. It's like, okay, how are we gonna? So sometimes it's not even like saving is a problem. We know of our parents who like send money back home,
Hmm.
right? So it's not necessarily earning money is the issue or saving money, but it's really about learning how to have a full financial plan, which includes, yes, earning money well. Yes, making sure that we understand what all of our expenses are, the essential expenses and those wants, right? That fun money, it's okay. But not forgetting that we want to save money for the future as well. And this is where I'm going to sort of like diverge a little bit because sometimes people will say, oh, I'm good with saving money. I just always spend it. And I'm like, well, did you make the decision at the beginning that that money was not to be spent? Because there is some money that is to be saved and never touched. And that's what we call like an emergency fund, unless there's an emergency fund. I had one client and she called it do not touch unless you're dying fund. Okay. So it's like under these circumstances, I will touch the money, right? If these 4, 5, 6 criteria
Yeah,
happen, then this is where I touch the money. But then there's also money that is the saving to spend fund that we are saving it to spend and not feeling guilty about it,
yeah,
right? Saving for that vacation. And then I want you to go on vacation. I want you to spend all the money that you've been
yeah.
saving for, right?
Hmm.
Saving for remodeling the bathroom. Go ahead and save it. And then when that bathroom remodel happens, you're going to go ahead and spend it, right? Because sometimes we get stuck there. It's like
Yeah,
we get
yeah,
into that hoarding
yeah,
section. And so it's like, okay, so there's the saving, right? For those short-term goals, those midterm goals, right? For that safety net, that emergency fund. But then when we're thinking about our future selves, and I'm not talking about 3 months from now, I'm talking about 5 years from now, right? That version of us 5 years from now. I'm talking about 10 years from now. How do we make sure we're also taking care of that person? Right? So that we don't have to work until we die, so
yeah.
that we don't have to wait until the age of 65 to retire,
Yeah.
right? Like we've been sort of spoon-fed this idea of like, oh, you just work for 20, 30, 45 years and then you just wait until you get a pension. I don't know about you, but I
Yeah.
know a lot of people in my age bracket and younger
Yeah.
never had access to a pension. So
Right.
our retirement has to be within our control, right? And
Right.
when we're thinking about how do we save for that, how do we plan for that, it starts by making decisions today. We don't wait until we're 60 to start thinking
Yeah.
about retirement.
That's right.
Yeah.
And a little bit of, again, about my story, like I retired when I wanted to. I didn't wait until 65. I didn't wait till 55. I was able to I worked in public service. So this kind of tells you I wasn't like making buku bucks, but I was working in public service. I worked in criminal defense for 19 years. And at the age of 39, I wrote in and I submitted my early retirement notice.
Oh my goodness. What?
Yeah, yeah. And it was because I had funded my own retirement. I didn't have to wait for Social Security. I didn't have to wait for a pension. I had saved and invested enough that now my portfolio, right? Now those investments, that wealth building fund covers my bills, and that's how I've been living, right? Now, I'm going to fast forward a little bit because some people, it's the idea is not to retire to do nothing. That
Hmm.
wasn't my plan. My plan was not to retire and sit on a beach all day and do
Right.
nothing,
Right.
especially because I knew that I wanted to retire early, but it was to have more control of my time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to spend more time with my friends, with my family, with my husband. I wanted to travel more. I didn't want to take no more 1 week or 2 week vacations, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to sort of enjoy life. And so at the age of 39, I had enough saved that I could now live off of my portfolio. And that's what I've been doing for the last several years. Now, I have alluded to the fact that, oh, clients, and you're like, okay, but you mentioned something about
Yeah.
clients. And so from that, I basically made working optional. I could work if I wanted to or not work if I didn't want to. And for me, reaching financial independence, and so financial independence again is where you're not relying on work to cover your expenses. For me, reaching financial independence was optional, and it was something that I wanted to exercise. But sharing how to reach that, how other families, how other women could reach financial independence wasn't optional to me. I felt it to be a calling. It
Mm.
felt it like something that I needed to do so that women and families can learn how to build wealth, so that they can learn how to manage the money that they are earning. Right. And it's really simple. We're not talking about something that no one's ever talked about. There's no secret sauce. I will share it here on the podcast. It's really about choosing a wealth building vehicle. For some people, that's real estate, and there's so many branches to real
Hmm.
estate.
Hmm.
For some people, that's entrepreneurship, right? There's no cap to the amount of money you can
Right.
make in entrepreneurship. And then for some people, it's the stock market, right? And I will give a caveat here because people think about the stock market or entrepreneurship and real estate and just think of like maybe have one idea in mind of what that looks like, but there's so many different branches here. And for me, one of the things that I used the stock market. I was working a 9 to 5. I had a really demanding job. I didn't have no time for a side hustle or entrepreneurship, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I just used my 9 to 5 to fund my early retirement. And although I have real estate now, at the time I did not. And the idea of being a real estate to being a landlord or was very scary. And the barrier to entry to real estate can be quite expensive, right? You need the
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
payment, you
Yeah.
have to have some knowledge. And so for me, the easiest one felt like the stock market. And when people come to me, they're like, okay, I just want to learn how to invest. And I'm like, do you have a 401k? Right?
Yeah.
And so many people are like, yeah, 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 I have one of those, but like, I want to learn how to invest. And I'm like, well, you are investing.
Yeah.
If you have access to a 401k, to a workplace retirement account, a 403b, maybe a thrift savings plan, if you're in the military or in federal service, then you have access to that. And we want to make sure that number one, you're contributing to it. And number two, that the money's in there and not sitting in a glorified savings account, that it's actually
Yeah.
being invested. And that is one of the biggest mistakes that I see. And it was a mistake that I made. I didn't know what a thrift savings plan was. I didn't know what a 401k was. I just know that the first day I started at my job, they told me to sign here and
Hmm.
here. And that was what I did. And then I let it go. And it wasn't until I started learning how to build wealth, how to
Yeah.
use compound interest, how to invest, that I realized, oh my gosh, my money has just been sitting there because I've been putting money inside of this
Yeah.
account and it was just sitting there, really not
Yeah.
doing anything.
Yeah. Hmm.
Wow, you have said a mouthful. This is some great information.
I'm still stuck on retiring at 39, even though I get it that you're doing other things that you've always wanted to do, which allows you to fund your lifestyle. But that's pretty impressive, Wally. I have to tell you. Yeah.
Thank you. And one thing that I will say, because I mentioned that did have a husband, and so people might say, okay, but like her husband works. And I'm like, no, we both reach financial independence. So I retired first, and then my husband retired. He was supposed to stay an extra year, but he was like, I'm done. And so we're both early retirees.
Wow.
And you know, it was something that we did in partnership together. But I also want to say it doesn't need to require you know, for those who are single, right? Or be like, okay, but I don't have a second income. You can fund your own retirement using one income. It is 100% possible
Hmm.
because if you have two income household, we were what you would call a DINK family,
Hmm.
and DINK is dual income, no kids, right?
Hmm.
So we are child free. But whether you have kids, whether you have a single income, whether you have dual income household, you know, for a dual income household, you tend to have more expenses
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
family of two, right? So if
Yeah.
you're single, you have less expenses. So the amount that you will need might be less than a family of four or a
Right.
family of two. So it
Right.
is really possible, but we don't start there, right? We have to understand first what our income is, and your income minus your expenses, whatever's left over, is what you use to fill those savings buckets and those wealth building buckets. So if you're bringing in $8,000 a month and you're spending $8,000 a month, it doesn't really leave a lot of money to save. It doesn't leave a lot of money to invest. It doesn't leave a lot of money to build financial security. So we understand, okay, how much money is it that I'm truly bringing in every week, every 2 weeks, every month? Where is my money going? What actually are my expenses? And I would encourage people to do an expense audit. So many times people will find the husband has a Netflix subscription, the daughter has a Netflix subscription, the wife, there's three
Hmm.
Netflix subscriptions in the family. They're all paying for it. Why? Because it costs 12, 13, 14, $15. So it doesn't feel like a lot, but multiply that for the amount of
Yeah.
months or years that you've had it, right?
Yeah.
How many of those wallet leaks might be happening? Right? So you have this faucet of money coming in. So you're working, you're having income in. So that's filling that bucket. But do you have holes in that bucket that you might not be
Right.
aware of? Right? That's what we call like a leaky bucket.
Mm.
Like, where are those leaks? And let's start plugging those in.
Mm. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, lot to think about here. So you
Yeah.
talked about the whole work optional thing. I love that concept and I love how you've executed it. Was that an original? I don't think I've heard that before.
Yeah, no, it was not actually. There was an author, her name is Tanya Hester, and she wrote the book. I think it's Becoming Work Optional or something work optional. So if you
Hmm.
Yeah.
sort of Google Tanya Hester work optional, and she really solidifies what being work optional means.
Okay.
But I had heard about it a little before, but I think she does a beautiful, she really breaks it down in a beautiful way. And it's really, especially for people who are early retirees, again, most of us is not the idea of never working again or
Hmm.
sitting around doing nothing.
Right.
It
Right.
might be even just taking a pay cut to work less hours, right?
Right.
Right.
Or it might be working for a nonprofit. It's like, okay, they can't pay me anything, but that's okay. I'd rather work with this organization or with this company because I have another way to cover my bills. And that's essentially what, you know, I did. Like for me, financial coaching is not something I don't use that money to live off of. Right now, I use that for some other things. So, like, I paid for my braces for my nieces. I fund my nieces and nephew 529 plans,
Hmm.
which are college savings
Hmm.
plans. So
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, any extra money that I do, I like use it to help my family. Um, but really our bills get paid from our portfolio. And I am part of what you would call the FIRE community.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But please
essentially,
explain it for our audience, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retired Early.
Hmm.
I like to switch out what the RE stands for because I, in some ways, wouldn't consider myself retired because I do have a
Hmm.
side business, right? But I'm just refocusing my energy. So financially independent, and I refocus my energy
Oh, I
to,
love that, Wally. I
I
like that
do.
even better. Yeah.
yeah, so in order to, do something else with my time and do something else with how, yeah, I live my life. And I will say some people join or become part of the fire movement because they hate their careers and their jobs. And so they really need to do this, right? So there's a bunch of 20, 30, and early 40-year-olds who are also, fired. They also reach financial independence and they really were escaping from something. I will say for me, that wasn't the case. I really enjoyed my work. I felt incredibly fulfilled, and I will say it was very hard, as you can imagine, working in criminal defense,
Hmm.
and basically that's like the public defender's office, right?
Hmm.
So I worked with in doing that work for many, many years, and it was incredibly challenging, but it could be rewarding, and it was also a lot of heartache, right? Um, but I really found a lot of purpose in it. And it was something that I really enjoyed. Now, I'll say again, not everything about that job is great, but for the most part, I love the career that I had. And I had reached financial independence a couple years prior to actually turning in my notice. And that also felt very empowering because I was there because I wanted to be. And
Yeah.
I
Right.
stayed a little bit longer because I was like, I'm good. Life is good, right? If somebody talks to me sideways, I know that I could leave and I'll be
Yeah.
okay. But I stayed a little bit longer because of that. And then I just needed to sort of make that decision. And I was like, what else is holding me here? And I think some of that was a little bit of fear, right? It was like,
Yeah.
okay, I know I've been
Naturally.
saving, right?
Yeah.
Like I know the plan is supposed to work, the math is supposed to math. But there was a little bit of fear there. And then as I talked to more people, and I just sort of realized, I was like, I can also do good work doing something else. And I can be the example, because for a long time, a lot of the voices that were out there, a lot of the voices that taught me and showed me, didn't look like me, didn't come from communities that I
Hmm.
came from. And I was like, I want there to be more women talking about financial independence, talking about saving, talking about investing, talking about building wealth. And I want more people who didn't come from money, who didn't have, multiple six-figure salaries,
Right. Right.
who were also able to do this. And I live in a high cost of living city, right? I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
living in Kentucky where rent
Yeah.
is $400. Like I live
Right.
in a really high cost of living area. And how with all of those things, I still was able to use financial concepts, right? Learn how to invest and be able to do it without turning it into a full-time job, right? When we're talking about investing, I'm not talking about having 3 or 4 screens looking at red lines and green lines. I didn't have time for that. I didn't have the
Yeah.
bandwidth for that. We're talking about really using the simple tools that you
Hmm.
already probably are using, like those
Yeah.
workplace retirement accounts. Make sure that you're using it to its fullest potential.
Wow. Okay. So, Wally, what's the difference between a financial advisor and a financial coach?
Love this question. So, a lot of people can call themselves a financial advisor. And so, if you have a financial advisor, the question that I would ask is this someone that you can have conversations with about, am I spending too much money? Right? Is this someone who's going to help you take a look at your spending plan and take a look at not just what 10 years or 15 years is looking like, but how do we pay for vacation? How do we pay for the holidays that are coming up? How do we pay for back to school? Right. So we want to make sure that uh if you are looking for that and you are not able to get that sometimes a financial coach could be a really great option. As a financial coach, I don't sell investments. I don't sell insurance products. I really sell a couple things. One, belief that financial independence is possible for you. to financial literacy and education. So it's really important that my clients, when we stop working together, that when someone says, "Oh, I see that you have X, Y, and Z. Why is that? Or why do you make this decision?" that they feel empowered and knowledgeable about why they're making the decisions that they are, and that they understand the actual money that's coming in and how it's going out, right? And so with these conversations and healing the relationship they have with their finances is everything that we do, everything that I do with my clients on a one-to-one basis. So it's really having a conversation just like this. Sometimes it's just with one person, sometimes it's with a couple, and hearing how is it that you want to design your life, right? If going on vacations is important to you, how do we make sure you go on that vacation, right? If buying a home or becoming a homeowner is important to you, how do we make sure that you're able to do that while also repairing or improving your relationship with money? So there's some logistical technical side to it, but it's also not forgetting that the reason why people don't do what we know we're supposed to do with money is not because of lack of education and information.
Mhm.
It's because we don't have a healthy relationship with money, and we avoid, right?
Yeah.
Understanding what our spending triggers were. I am a natural spender. I can justify just about any purchase, okay?
Really?
Oh yeah. I was very mindless shopper, on my way to go get gas in the car, and I see Marshalls, Ross, TJ's Maxx, Nordstrom Rack, right? Like I was a very impulsive shopper. Go to Target to buy laundry detergent and toilet paper and leave with pillows and candles and notebooks.
Yeah.
So I was a very impulsive shopper. And one of the things that I realized when I started realizing that, okay, I am setting money aside for saving. I have no idea what I'm even saving for. There was like no rhyme or reason. There was really no plan to what I was doing, that I needed to sort of fix that. And one of the things that I did was say, okay, well, how much money do I actually have left over to save after I pay my bills? And one of the exercises that we do in financial coaching is really to understand where the money is actually going. Because again, sometimes people will make a list of their bills and then forget about the unplanned expense. What about if you get a parking ticket?
Mhm.
What about if you get unexpected medical bill, right? What happens if you have a mechanical issue with a vehicle, right, with your car? And so we want to understand, okay, how do we make sure we set ourselves up for success, even when life is gonna life, right?
Right. Right.
When those things happen. So when we're thinking about a financial advisor, they tend to be people who sell investments, and they tend to be people who sell products. And we just want to make sure that we also understand how they're getting paid, right?
Mhm.
Their commission and their fee comes from selling you products that you may not even understand. And I have clients who actually work with me, a financial coach, and work with a financial advisor. And now, for the first time, they know how to have those conversations,
Yeah.
right? Now they know how to ask those right questions. And it could be a really lovely pairing, right? This is not about like ditch your financial advisor.
Right.
This is about, are you using them to the maximum potential? And also, is your financial advisor really have your best interest in mind? Because again, if they're selling you
Right.
products or they're selling you investments, they might be selling you some things that really don't align with what you want. And again, some of that comes with that financial literacy. It's like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm supposed to have. And that is some of the things that we talk about in our one-on-one coaching sessions.
Wow. Thank
Wow.
you so much. Yeah, for clarifying that.
Yeah. So, what was the biggest money mistake you made with money?
Oh man, I made so many. Buying a timeshare was a
Oh,
terrible
wow.
investment.
Oh, Wally, you bought one of those.
Yeah, that
Now,
was
now I
bad.
see you as human.
Yeah, that was a bad one. And I will say also in my 20s, I spent every extra dollar that I had. I didn't overspend, so I knew enough. A lot of the personal finance gurus, they will say, stay away from debt, don't get into credit card debt. So that wasn't something that I really struggled with. But once I paid all my bills and I had money left over, I spent every single dollar that I had. And it went to things like clothes and shoes and accessories and handbags and home goods. Once I bought my house, I was like, ooh, the home goods store. Um,
Yeah.
And it was like really that was where a lot of those things, a lot of that money went. So those were a lot of mistakes that I made. I purchased my home when I was fairly young. I was 26, 27 years old when I purchased my home. And I had a three-bedroom house for me and my dog, who
Mm.
needs that much of a house.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine was like, "Hey, have you ever considered a roommate?" And I was like, "Ooh, extra money." So you would think I would have used the rent money that I collected from the roommate to save. No, I was like, "Ooh, extra money to spend."
Yeah.
And so that was a really big mistake when I think about the amount of money that I collected while I had roommates. And I'm like, wow, I literally just spent that money. So I
Yeah.
increased my income and then just increased my spending instead of, so those were a lot of the mistakes that I made, right? And again, just from not growing up in a household that was like financially literate, being a first gen college graduate, being a first gen professional, right? I was like, oh, I think I made it. Like I paid my bills. I know enough of not getting into credit card debt. Like I know that. And then that was all I knew. So really in my 20s, even in my early 30s, those were the mistakes that I was having. And now I mentioned that I had a career that I loved, but I did have to switch offices. And that was sort of like the start of my transformation, transforming my relationship with money because I had an amazing career and worked with people that I cared about, doing fulfilling work. And then when management changed because my boss left and we got a new supervisor and a new director, what was once an ideal work situation became quite toxic. And I felt very stuck because I was in a very specialized field, right? So I
Hmm.
just couldn't get up and leave. And I was like, man, like, what is happening right now? Like, maybe if I missed one paycheck, I'll be okay. But if I miss two paychecks, I'm going to lose everything that I worked so hard for. And that was really like an eye-opening moment of how much money have you made throughout your life? And here's maybe like a tip for all the audience members. The Social Security Administration used to mail these out. They don't mail them out anymore, but you can get it for free online. You can go to ssa.gov. So this is a Social Security Administration
Hmm.
website, and you can create a free account
Hmm.
online and look at your earnings report and your lifetime earnings. And I had my first job when I was, 14 or 14, 15 years old. And I worked for summer youth and I made my first, $400. So I had all of the money that I had earned throughout my career. And when I added up the amount of money that I had made throughout my lifetime, and so by this time I was maybe 30, I was like, where did all that money go? And that was really eye-opening. Because of course not all that money went into my bank account, right? Because we got
Right.
taxes,
Right.
but
Right.
it was still a decent amount of money. And I was just like, I don't have anything to show except for a closet full of clothes, to show for, the amount of money that I had made. And that was really eye-opening. That's when I realized, okay, there has to be more to managing
Yeah.
finances.
Yeah. Wow. Excellent point. So Wally, should someone who is in debt begin investing?
I think this, if that's not the number one question, it's
Yeah.
probably like the
Yeah.
number two questions. And the answer is it depends. I believe that for most people, the answer is yes. Because if you have access to a 401k, I don't think you should stop investing and saving for your retirement in order to pay off debt. Why? Because $5 inside of your retirement account is going to do way more than $5 towards that debt will. And not all debt is created equally, right? And this is not talking about good debt or bad debt. This is talking about expensive debt and cheap debt, right? So we think of mortgage as cheap debt. We think of something like a credit card that has 19,
Mhm.
20, even 30% interest rate as expensive debt. And we definitely want to make sure we get rid of as much of the expensive debt as possible. But I do believe that for most people, it is not necessarily that you could, but I think you should continue to build wealth, continue to invest while also having a debt payoff plan. And so many times people will stop saving, right? Whether it's for retirement or stop investing for
Mhm.
retirement, whatever the case might be, or saving, for the future. And then they become debt free. So now they have zero debt, but now the car breaks down and they have no money in savings. What do you do then? Right?
Yeah.
Relive the cycle of putting it on a credit card, taking out a HELOC, whatever the case might be. So I think it's really important to make sure that you're saving money for those emergencies, that you continue to build wealth and then have a debt payoff plan, because there it is possible to do both. So for most people, I would say yes, but it does depend.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That, I tell you, you have shared so much great information. Certainly information that Teresa and I both know I can speak for us in saying that's going to be helpful to our audience. So we appreciate that. Those are all the questions that we have for you today. Do you have any parting words for our audience?
Yeah, I would say maybe some like homework, right? I think
Uh-huh.
really avoidance can be something that really stifles our financial success. And so if it's been a while since you opened up that bank account or since you looked at those credit card statements to actually see where money is going, I really would just encourage you to just take a look at where is your money going, right? Especially now where so many things are automated, right? You can have these subscriptions that automatically renew. Then you have, if you have an iPhone, you have Apple Pay and you have all of these other
Mm,
things. Really understand what are all of the expenses that you have. And I do suggest starting with what are the things that absolutely need to be paid, right? How do we keep a roof over our head, food on the table, keep the lights on, keep gas in the car? Understand what are your true essential expenses. And if you find that even with your most essential expenses, there's not a lot of room to save and invest, then that's sort of like a different question, right? Because we can either increase our income to widen that gap or we can decrease expenses. For most people, decreasing expenses is the easiest, but sometimes we just aren't making enough money for the type of life that we've set up. And so, if you can't decrease expenses, then we need to think of ways of increasing that income so that you do begin to build, go from, financially surviving, right, to financially thriving, to go just from having a financial safety net to really say, oh, I am financially abundant and I can build wealth. So I would say that would be my first like to do, is to make sure that you take a look at your numbers and get to know your numbers very intimately. Because if you don't take care of your money, if you don't have time for your money, it's not going to take care of you.
mm. Okay, thank you so much. And Wally, how can people contact you if they want to make that connection after today's show?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Lou and Teresa, for inviting me to have this conversation. If you or your audience wants to learn more about me, you can go to my website, which is financiallythriving.com. And I'm really active on Instagram. So I'm also there, which is financially_thriving. But you can find all of that on my website.
Okay. Wow. Again, thank you so much. Such a great conversation. And as you were talking, you not only educated your our audience, you've also provided some information that I'm mulling over, thinking, didn't see it that way. So thank you so much for joining us. And Teresa and I wish you all the best. Take good care.
Thank you.